I woke up to another ordinary Tuesday sunlight filtering through our bedroom blinds, completely unaware my entire world was about to shatter. When I stepped into our kitchen, Amanda was sitting at our dining table, her face unnaturally calm, as she slid a neatly stapled document across to me. The title made my heart stop, 15 Reasons Why I Cannot Stay. 7 years of marriage, countless memories, all our plans and dreams, suddenly balanced on 15 typed pages that weighed heavier than anything I had ever held. My hands trembled, but something deep inside whispered there might still be hope. Before I begin sharing how I saved my marriage, let me know where you are watching from and hit that like and subscribe button if you have ever faced a relationship crisis that seemed impossible to overcome. The morning Amanda handed me that list feels both like yesterday and a lifetime ago. We met 8 years ago at a housewarming party thrown by our mutual friend Jackson. I was 35, focused on climbing the corporate ladder at Wilson and Grant Financial Services. Amanda was 32, passionate about shaping young minds. As a third-grade teacher at Parkview Elementary, the moment I saw her laughing across the room, something clicked. She had this way of making everyone around her feel special, like they were the only person that mattered. Her auburn hair caught the light when she moved, and her green eyes sparkled with intelligence and warmth. Our connection was immediate and undeniable. We talked until 3 in the morning about everything from childhood dreams to our favorite breakfast cereals. Within 6 months, I knew she was the one. I proposed during a sunset picnic at Riverside Park, the same place we had our second date. The tears in her eyes when she said yes still rank as one of my happiest memories. Our wedding at First Baptist Church was everything we had hoped for. Amanda walked down the aisle in a vintage-inspired gown that belonged to her grandmother. My best man Thomas nearly forgot the rings, causing a moment of panic that we later laughed about during our toasts. Both our families blended seamlessly, with my younger sister Gabriella becoming fast friends with Amanda's brother Ethan. It felt like everything was falling perfectly into place. The honeymoon in Hawaii was magical, 2 weeks of sunsets, adventures, and planning our future together. We snorkeled with sea turtles, hiked to hidden waterfalls, and spent lazy mornings drinking coffee on our private balcony. We talked about having 2 kids, maybe 3, and buying a house with a big backyard where they could play. When we returned, real life resumed, but our happiness continued. We bought our first home 6 months later, a modest 3-bedroom colonial with a maple tree in the front yard. Amanda painted the living room herself, insisting on the perfect shade of blue that took 4 attempts to get right. I assembled furniture while she organized our wedding photos into albums. Every decision felt like a step toward building something lasting. Our first anniversary celebration at Antonio's, the Italian restaurant where we had our first date, became a tradition. Each year, we would order the same meals, share tiramisu for dessert, and gift each other something meaningful. Amanda gave me an engraved pocket watch on our first anniversary. I gave her a silver bracelet with her birthstone. These rituals felt sacred, a foundation we were building together. Our relationship seemed different from others we knew. We rarely argued, and when we did, we worked through issues quickly. We shared similar values about family, money, and life goals. Amanda was practical and grounded, balancing my occasional impulsivity. I admired her patience and compassion while she appreciated my ambition and problem-solving skills. Friends often commented on how well we complemented each other, calling us the perfect match. In those early years, I believed we were unshakable. We were partners in everything, supporting each other through challenges and celebrating victories together. When Amanda earned Teacher of the Year at her school, I surprised her with a weekend getaway to celebrate. When I landed a major client at work, she organized a dinner party with our closest friends. We were a team moving forward together toward the future we both wanted. Looking back now, I can pinpoint exactly when the cracks began forming in our marriage, though I was blind to them at the time. It started about 3 years ago, when I was offered a promotion to Senior Portfolio Manager. The role came with significantly more responsibility, prestige, and of course, a substantial salary increase. I was thrilled, and Amanda celebrated with me, genuinely proud of my accomplishment. What neither of us fully appreciated was how this promotion would transform our daily lives. My workdays stretched longer, often extending well into the evening. I began bringing work home on weekends, my laptop becoming a permanent fixture on our dining table. Conference calls interrupted dinner, and my phone buzzed constantly with urgent messages from clients and colleagues. I justified these intrusions as temporary sacrifices for our future. Just one more year of hard work, I told myself, and things would calm down. I would establish myself in the role, train my team properly, and reclaim our personal time. But 1 year became 2, and the demands never lessened. The first noticeable change in Amanda was her smile. It appeared less frequently, and when it did, it rarely reached her eyes. Our animated dinner conversations about her students or my day gradually shortened into brief exchanges of information. She stopped asking about my work, perhaps tired of hearing about projects she knew would keep me at the office until 9 at night. Small disagreements began surfacing over things that never bothered us before. I forgot our dinner plans with her parents, too absorbed in preparing a presentation. She became irritated when I missed her school's open house, an event she had reminded me about 3 times. I dismissed her frustration, explaining that my clients needed me, unable to see that she needed me too. On our 5th anniversary, I arrived at Antonio's 45 minutes late, having lost track of time in a meeting. Amanda sat alone at our usual table, an empty wine glass in front of her, and hurt evident in her eyes. I apologized, profusely blaming traffic and an unexpected client issue. She accepted my apology, but something had shifted. The evening felt forced, our tradition tarnished. The first serious conversation about our problems happened 6 months later. Amanda approached me one Sunday morning as I was answering emails in bed. She sat beside me and asked when we would start trying for a baby. We had always talked about having children by our 5th year of marriage, but I had been subtly pushing the timeline further into the future. I remember closing my laptop and taking her hand, explaining that my career was at a critical juncture. Starting a family now would complicate things, potentially derailing the trajectory I had worked so hard to establish. I suggested waiting another year or 2 until things stabilized at work. What I failed to recognize was the look of profound disappointment that crossed her face, a silent acknowledgement that my priorities had fundamentally changed. Amanda became quieter after that conversation. She started spending more evenings with her sister Danielle or her friend Stephanie. When I questioned her about it, she simply said she needed social interaction since I was rarely available. I accepted this explanation without digging deeper, relieved in some ways to have fewer demands on my limited free time. There were warning signs I completely missed. The book about marriage communication that appeared on her nightstand. The way she stopped planning for our future together, no longer discussing dream vacations or home renovations. The increasing frequency with which she mentioned her colleague Tara, who had recently divorced. These were flares sent up into our shared sky, but I was too preoccupied to notice the signals. The morning that changed everything started like any other. I woke at 6, showered and dressed for work while Amanda prepared breakfast. The kitchen smelled of coffee and toast, but the atmosphere felt unusually tense. Amanda was fully dressed, which was unusual for her day off. She wore a simple blue blouse and jeans, her hair pulled back neatly. Something about her composure made me uneasy. We sat across from each other at the breakfast table, the morning light casting long shadows across the hardwood floor. Amanda cleared her throat and reached for a folder beside her plate, one I had not noticed until that moment. Her hands were steady as she removed a document and placed it between us. The header stopped my heart, 15 Reasons I Cannot Continue. It was typed in clean, professional font, each page numbered and organized. This was not a spontaneous decision. This was something she had considered thoroughly, deliberately, perhaps for months. The blood rushed to my ears as I looked up from the paper to her face. She was watching me with a mixture of sadness and resolution. There was no anger in her expression, which somehow made it worse. Anger I could fight against. This calm determination felt immovable, like a mountain that had formed between us. I cannot fully express the physical sensation that overtook me in that moment. My chest constricted painfully, and my stomach plummeted as though I were free-falling. The kitchen, so familiar and safe, just moments before suddenly felt foreign. The morning light that had seemed warm now felt harsh and exposing. Looking down at the document, I struggled to comprehend what was happening. The words swam before my eyes, phrases jumping out at me like accusations, emotional abandonment, broken promises, fundamental differences. Each one struck like a physical blow, but I forced myself to read through the entire list. The 15 reasons Amanda listed were devastatingly specific, a chronicle of our slow disconnection that I had been too blind to see. Reason number 1. I had missed 12 important events in the past year, including her birthday dinner, her father's retirement party, and her school's recognition ceremony, where she received an award for educational innovation. She had attended each of my work functions alone, explaining my absence to colleagues who eventually stopped asking about me. Reason number 2. We had not been on a proper date in over 8 months. Our anniversary dinner had been the last time we went out specifically to enjoy each other's company, and even that evening had been shortened by my early departure for a client emergency that, looking back, could have waited until morning. Reason number 3. I spent an average of 4 hours on weekends engaged with work time that was once dedicated to us. The hiking trails we used to explore together had not seen our footprints in nearly 2 years. The cooking classes we enjoyed had been abandoned when I repeatedly canceled at the last minute. Reason number 4. I had stopped asking about her day, her students, her challenges, and triumphs at work. Our conversations had become logistical, focusing on schedules and household needs, rather than emotional connection. Reason number 5. Physical intimacy had become rare and perfunctory. What was once a passionate expression of our love had transformed into an infrequent obligation, often initiated out of guilt or duty, rather than desire. The next set of reasons cut even deeper, addressing the fundamental values that had shifted in our relationship. Reason number 6. I had unilaterally changed our timeline for starting a family, dismissing her biological clock and deep desire for children as secondary to my career ambition. Reason number 7. Financial success had become my primary measure of our marriage's health, while emotional well-being had taken a back seat. The promotions and bonuses I celebrated meant little to Amanda compared to the quality of our relationship. Reason number 8. My vision for our future now revolved entirely around my career progression with no consideration for her professional goals or our original shared dreams. Reason number 9. I had developed an unhealthy relationship with work stress, bringing tension home and creating an atmosphere where Amanda felt she needed to manage my moods rather than share her own concerns. Reason number 10. Our value systems had diverged significantly. While Amanda continued to prioritize experiences, relationships, and personal growth, I had become fixated on status achievement and financial security. The final reasons addressed who I had become as a person and partner. Reason number 11. I no longer engaged in activities purely for enjoyment. The man who once spontaneously suggested weekend road trips or stargazing in the backyard had disappeared, replaced by someone constantly checking email and discussing market trends. Reason number 12. I had grown impatient and critical quick to dismiss Amanda's concerns as trivial compared to my professional challenges. Reason number 13. I had stopped being emotionally available during difficult times. When her mother was diagnosed with breast cancer last year, Amanda navigated much of that journey alone while I remained absorbed in work. Reason number 14. I had isolated us from our social circle, declining invitations until they eventually stopped coming. Amanda had maintained these connections independently, creating separate lives where we once shared a community. Reason number 15. The final reason was the most painful. I was no longer the man she fell in love with, and she no longer believed I could be that person again. The qualities that had drawn her to me, my compassion, presence, and joy for life, had been buried under ambition and stress. Each point pierced me with its truth. I could not deny a single accusation. Somehow, while chasing success, I had failed at the most important thing in my life. After reading the final reason, I looked up at Amanda, desperate for any sign that this was negotiable. Her expression remained gentle, but resolute, breaking my heart all over again. I am not proud of my initial reaction. I became defensive, grasping for justifications that even I knew were hollow. I pointed out how my career supported our lifestyle. I reminded her of the financial security we enjoyed because of my dedication to work. I even suggested she was being selfish for not recognizing the sacrifices I made for our future. Amanda listened quietly, which only emphasized how reasonable she was being compared to my desperate flailing. When I finally ran out of excuses, she spoke calmly, her voice steady despite the tears in her eyes. She told me she had signed a 6-month lease on an apartment across town. She would be moving out that weekend. She had already spoken with a divorce attorney to understand her options, though she had not yet filed papers. She was not making an impulsive decision. She had been contemplating this for nearly a year, trying everything she could think of to reconnect with me before concluding it was impossible. The revelation that she had been planning this for months while I remained oblivious was perhaps the most shocking part. How disconnected had I become to miss such significant unhappiness in my own wife? How self-absorbed had I grown to not notice her pulling away. I begged her for another chance. I promised immediate changes, swore I would reprioritize our marriage starting that very minute. I pleaded for time to prove myself. Amanda hesitated, then conceded to a 2-week period before she made her final decision. The apartment was paid for regardless, she explained, so she had nothing to lose by giving me this last opportunity. Those first days after our confrontation passed in a blur of pain and desperation. I went to work but accomplished nothing. My boss Frank called me into his office to discuss my sudden drop in performance. I could not bring myself to explain that my marriage was collapsing, so I blamed it on health issues, promising to improve soon. Night after night, I lay awake in our bed, surrounded by Amanda's things that would soon be packed away. I scrolled through photos on my phone, examining the gradual change in her smile. Over the years, the light in her eyes diminishing in direct proportion to my career advancement. I revisited our wedding album, barely recognizing the joyful present man I had been that day. In desperation, I called Thomas my oldest friend, and the only person I felt I could confide in. We met at a quiet bar where I poured out everything, including the 15 reasons that had destroyed my illusions about my marriage. Thomas listened without judgment but did not offer the validation I subconsciously sought. Instead, he asked pointed questions that forced me to confront uncomfortable truths. Had I truly been happy with how I was living? Did I actually enjoy the person I had become? Was the next promotion, the next bonus, the next client worth losing the most important relationship in my life? Driving home that night, the reality, Amanda's accusations, settled into my bones. She was right about everything. I had systematically dismantled our connection in pursuit of external validation and material success. I had betrayed not just Amanda but my own values and identity in the process. 7 days after Amanda handed me the list, I hit my lowest point. Despite my promises to change, my attempts to reconnect had been clumsy and superficial. I bought flowers, suggested dinner at her favorite restaurant, and tried to engage in conversations about her work. But these gestures felt hollow even to me. They were what you would do for an anniversary or birthday, not rebuilding a shattered marriage. Amanda remained polite but distant. She had already packed several suitcases which stood by our bedroom door like sentinels, announcing the end of our life together. She had scheduled meetings with 2 more divorce attorneys and was researching the process for separating our finances. The inevitability of her departure became more concrete with each passing day. The breaking point came when I found an appointment card for a consultation with divorce lawyer Patricia Walsh while doing laundry. The date was circled firmly in red ink, just 3 days away. This was not a threat or negotiation tactic. Amanda was methodically proceeding with ending our marriage. That night, a heavy rain pounded against our windows as I sat alone in my car in the driveway, unable to go inside and face the ghost of what we once had. Water streamed down the windshield, blurring the lights from our home, the home that would soon no longer be ours. For the first time since I was a child, I broke down, completely sobbing uncontrollably until my throat was raw and my eyes burned. In that moment of total surrender, I finally understood the magnitude of what I was losing. Not just a wife or a home, but the foundation of my existence, the person who knew me better than anyone, who had loved me at my best and tried to reach me at my worst. I was losing Amanda, not because she had changed, but because I had changed in ways that made me unrecognizable to both of us. The pain was excruciating, a physical ache that radiated from my chest outward. I had caused this. Every reason on her list was valid. Every accusation was true. I had systematically prioritized everything else above the woman I had promised to cherish, above all others. The next morning, instead of going to work, I called in sick and made an emergency appointment with Dr. Lawson, a marriage counselor recommended by a colleague who had recently reconciled with his wife after a separation. I did not tell Amanda where I was going. At this point, words meant nothing without corresponding actions. Dr. Lawson was a thoughtful woman in her 50s who listened without interruption as I explained our situation, including the 15 reasons and my failed attempts to address them. When I finished speaking, her first question caught me off guard. She asked about my parents' marriage. Reluctantly, I shared the story. I rarely discussed my father walking out when I was 11, leaving my mother to raise my sister and me alone. I described the financial struggles that followed, the constant stress about money, and my childhood vow to never be vulnerable to that kind of abandonment or insecurity again. Through gentle but persistent questioning, Dr. Lawson helped me recognize the patterns I had unconsciously established. My obsession with career advancement was not just ambition, but a desperate attempt to create the security my childhood had lacked. My emotional withdrawal was not indifference, but a protective mechanism against potential pain. I had been so focused on preventing the kind of abandonment my father had inflicted that I had become the one doing the abandoning in my own marriage. We discussed how I had been living according to external measurements of success, chasing promotions and salary increases, while neglecting the internal metrics of happiness and connection. I had succeeded professionally, but failed personally, winning the approval of bosses and clients while losing the love and respect of the person who mattered most. Most importantly, Dr. Lawson helped me understand what Amanda truly needed from me, not grand gestures or material provision, but presence, attention, and genuine partnership. The emotional intimacy I had been avoiding was precisely what would save my marriage if anything could at this point. I left that session with painful clarity about my role in our breakdown and a desperate desire to make meaningful changes, not just to save my marriage, but to reclaim the person I wanted to be. I understood that even if Amanda still chose to leave, I needed to address these issues for my own well-being and future relationships. With only days remaining before Amanda's consultation with the divorce lawyer, I developed a plan that went far beyond flowers or date nights. This would require vulnerability and commitment unlike anything I had demonstrated in years. I took an unprecedented step and requested a 3-month leave of absence from work effective immediately. My boss, Frank, was stunned, but when I explained that my marriage depended on it, he reluctantly approved. I then spent hours creating a detailed plan addressing each of Amanda's 15 concerns, with specific actions and timelines for implementing changes. Next, I scheduled ongoing appointments with Dr. Lawson for individual therapy, as well as holding slots for couples counseling, should Amanda be willing to attend. I researched family planning specialists and collected information about adoption and fertility options, acknowledging that I had unilaterally delayed our plans for children. I contacted our old friends apologizing for my absence and asking them to be patient as I worked to reconnect. I called Amanda's sister Danielle, swallowing my pride to ask for her insight about what Amanda might need that I had been missing. On the evening before Amanda's appointment with the divorce lawyer, I prepared her favorite meal, homemade lasagna, garlic bread, and tiramisu from Antonio's. I arranged photos from our relationship throughout the dining room, from our first date to our most recent holiday before my promotion had changed everything. I placed a single item at her seat, a letter containing the one reason she should stay. When Amanda arrived home, surprise registered on her face at the transformation of our space. She hesitantly agreed to sit down for dinner, though her guarded expression suggested she suspected this was merely another superficial attempt to win her back. After a tense meal where we made small talk about safe topics, I asked her to read the letter. Her hands trembled slightly as she opened the envelope, perhaps anticipating more empty promises or manipulative pleas. The letter began simply, "One reason to stay. Because I promised to become the man worthy of your love, not the man you married, but the man you deserve." I explained that I was not asking her to stay for who I had been, or even who I was now, but for who I was committed to becoming. I acknowledged the validity of every reason she had for leaving, and took full responsibility for the damage I had caused. I outlined the concrete steps I had already taken, including the leave of absence and therapy appointments, emphasizing that these were not negotiating tactics but necessary changes regardless of her decision. Most importantly, I shared my deepest realization that I had been running from vulnerability my entire adult life, using work and achievement to avoid the deeper connections that made life meaningful. I had been so afraid of being hurt that I had become the source of hurt for the person I loved most. I concluded by stating that I would respect whatever choice she made, even if that meant proceeding with the divorce. My transformation was not conditional on her staying. It was something I needed to pursue either way. But if she could find even a fraction of the patience and love she had shown throughout our marriage, I would spend every day earning back her trust and rebuilding our connection. Amanda read the letter twice, tears streaming down her face. When she finally looked up, her expression was a complex mixture of pain, hope, and cautious skepticism. She admitted that part of her wanted to believe me, but after years of broken promises and shifting priorities, words alone could not convince her. We talked through the night more honestly than we had in years. Amanda shared how lonely she had felt, even when I was physically present, how she had gradually lost hope that I would ever truly see her again. She described watching me become a stranger, so consumed by external success that I had lost sight of what made life meaningful. I listened without defensiveness, acknowledging the truth in every word. For the first time, I truly heard her pain, without trying to minimize or explain it away. The depth of my failure as a husband became painfully clear, but so did the possibility of redemption if I could sustain the clarity of this moment. As dawn approached, Amanda made a decision that would change both our lives. She would cancel her appointment with the divorce lawyer, but would still move into the apartment she had rented. She needed space to see if my commitment to change was genuine or another short-lived response to the threat of losing her. She agreed to weekly couples counseling sessions with Dr. Lawson and promised to keep an open mind about our future. It was far less than I had hoped for, but more than I deserved. The opportunity to prove myself through consistent action rather than desperate promises was all I could ask for under the circumstances. As Amanda gathered her things to leave for work, she paused at the door and said something that gave me my first real hope. "Despite everything, I still love you, Herbert. I just do not know if love is enough anymore." Those first weeks of separation were among the most challenging of my life. Living alone in our house, surrounded by reminders of our shared history, I confronted the emptiness I had created through years of emotional absence. The initial shock and adrenaline faded, leaving me with the harder work of sustained change and personal growth. Dr. Lawson became an essential guide through this process, helping me recognize destructive patterns and develop healthier alternatives. I learned to identify the anxiety that drove my workaholic tendencies and find other ways to address it. I practiced vulnerability and emotional honesty skills that had atrophied through years of professional detachment. Our couple sessions were initially tense, with Amanda reluctant to hope too quickly. She had been disappointed too many times before. But as weeks passed and my commitment remained steady, small changes became evident. Amanda began sharing more of her thoughts and feelings. She occasionally stayed for dinner after our counseling appointments. Once she laughed genuinely at something I said, a sound I had not heard in too long. I was careful not to push too hard or expect too much. This was not a quick fix, but a fundamental reconstruction of myself and our relationship. Each day required intentional choices and consistent effort, proving through actions that my priorities had truly shifted. The most challenging aspect was accepting that I might do everything right and still lose Amanda. There were no guarantees, no certain outcomes. The damage had been extensive, and trust once broken is not easily restored. This uncertainty forced me to focus on the process, rather than the result, on becoming a better person regardless of whether our marriage survived. Amanda watched these changes with guarded optimism. She noticed when I remained fully present in our conversations instead of checking my phone. She acknowledged my efforts to re-establish connections with friends we had once shared. Most significantly, she began to believe that my transformation might be sustainable rather than a temporary response to crisis. 6 months later, our relationship had evolved into something neither of us could have predicted. Amanda moved back home after 3 months in her apartment, though she kept the lease until it expired as a safety net. We were not the same couple we had been before the crisis, and that was a good thing. The foundation we were building now was stronger, based on honest communication and mutual respect, rather than unspoken expectations. My career had taken a different direction as well. After returning from leave, I negotiated a lateral move to a position with more regular hours and less travel. The reduction in stress improved not just my home life but my overall well-being. I discovered I was actually more effective in this role, bringing creativity and balance that had been impossible under my previous workload. We began planning for our future again, this time with equal input and genuine compromise. We scheduled a consultation with a fertility specialist, acknowledging that we had lost valuable years, but were still hopeful about starting a family. We also researched adoption, opening ourselves to different ways of building the family we both wanted. The most profound change was in our daily interactions. Simple moments became meaningful again, cooking dinner together, walking around our neighborhood in the evening, discussing books or current events without distraction. I learned to truly listen when Amanda spoke about her day, engaging with her experiences rather than mentally planning my next work project. On our 8th anniversary, we held a small ceremony to renew our vows, not as a performance for others, but as a meaningful recommitment to each other. and to the lessons we had learned through nearly losing everything. Amanda surprised me with her vows acknowledging her role in allowing communication to deteriorate and promising her own commitment to our renewed relationship. As I look back on that morning when Amanda handed me the 15 reasons she was leaving, I can now recognize it as the wake-up call that saved not just our marriage but my very self. Sometimes we need to face losing what matters most before we can see what we are becoming and choose a different path. I have learned that love is not a static emotion but a daily choice requiring attention and nurturing to thrive. I understand now that true success cannot be measured in promotions or bank statements, but in the depth of our connections and the integrity with which we live our values. Most importantly, I have discovered that vulnerability is not weakness, but the ultimate strength, allowing us to be truly known and loved for who we are rather than the facades we construct. My greatest accomplishment is not any professional achievement, but the trust I have rebuilt with Amanda one day, and one choice at a time. Have you ever experienced a wake-up call that forced you to reevaluate what truly matters in life? Sometimes the greatest gift is the moment when we nearly lose everything as it shows us what we truly value. If this story resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share it with someone who might need to hear it. Drop a comment below about a time when you had to fight to save something precious to you. Thank you for listening to my journey, and I wish you the courage to prioritize what truly matters in your own life.